And obviously, if you missed the allusion to the vampires, it's the idea that they could only be killed with a stake of heart, and obviously doing it with holly is supposed to be kind of ironic, obviously taking something from the season. And obviously his nephew's shocked, and then he says, look, leave me alone, you keep it your way and let me keep it mine. And it's kind of interesting there, because obviously not only does he say it sternly, which you can analyse, but he also says that Christmas, in this way he's trying to say Christmas is something that's up for discussion, how people keep Christmas. There is a way to be keeping it in, that's your way, and a way to keep it that's my way. And that kind of negates a lot of the communal feeling in Christmas, and the idea that people are supposed to come together and people are supposed to share and actually be joyous together. And obviously you could kind of link that to some religious meanings and some modern day meanings, etc., however you wanted to link it. But the idea here is obviously that is the differentiation that Scrooge wants to kind of do his own Christmas, and maybe that's where he goes wrong. And then you can take that argument if you want. And it says, keep it, repeated Scrooge never, but you don't keep it, leave me to it alone then, much good it may do you, much good it has ever done you. So again, he mocks someone close to him, which shows a lot about him. And then Scrooge's nephew, obviously probably the more religious, well, obviously the more religious of the two at this moment, he says, but you don't keep it. And so obviously we're supposed to take that Scrooge's actions, what he said here, aren't the way that you can take it. There isn't two ways of taking Christmas. Christmas only can be taken one way. And then he goes into a nice long kind of championing of Christmas, and it says about how good it is, and there's loads of things you can pick out in that section there. But the most important thing is that you just got kind of this championing Christmas, and obviously it's the second one, like the rebuttal for what Scrooge said earlier. So obviously we've got that nice contrast again to set people up, to set the reader up for kind of championing the good. And obviously that's kind of set, it's just kind of proved even within the novel itself, because the clerk, even though he's on his own, he involuntarily applauded. So he's so impressed with what was just said, he's really proud, and obviously he sees Christmas the same way. So it's interesting, he's being set up around, there's people around him who do set it up the right way, and these people can't have an influence on him. These people, just in their goodness or their kindness or whatever it is, as we're going to see again in a minute, none of these people can actually have the influence on him, which kind of again sets us up for the stressing of Marley being dead, because again it's only something supernatural in the coming of Marley's ghost after being dead that can actually get him to change. Again, you could take it that way. Moving on then, so he just kind of goes on this way, and again he mocks his nephew, and then invites him around for dinner, and then he kind of mocks, again they have this mock thing, and it's really interesting here. And Scrooge actually asks him at one point, why'd you get married? And he says, because I fell in love. And he says, you fell in love? And he said, there's, as if it was nothing in the world more ridiculous. And it shows you the scorn here that Scrooge has for love. Probably isn't just because of probably isn't just because Scrooge himself just doesn't like it. It sounds like he was burnt to some extent, even in that, because of the way he ridicules it. And the description is that he growls it, and then obviously it's mentioned again, as ridiculous, and he says it's more foolish than Christmas. So again, we see his kind of harsh character towards anything kind of positive, or things that we normally take as positive and joyous. And so then they kind of have a little bit of a disagreement again, and then he just says good afternoon to him 3 times, just telling him to get lost. And so finally actually ends up being 5 times, and the nephew ends up going. But again, it just shows how cold Scrooge is, just like go away, go away, go away, go away. And then as he left, they're happy. So you can see that actually the connection that the clerk and the nephew have, because obviously they kind of share the same ideas, even though they're not very rich, they're still happy. And obviously we can see by now that Scrooge is anything but. And then some people come into the house, and then again we kind of revisit that, who are you, and then Mr. Marley says he's been dead, and he says died 7 years ago this very night. And obviously that kind of doesn't make sense in and of itself. It says he would have answered to both, but here he's actually asked specifically, which one are you, not if someone's coming in and saying one or the other. So that someone brought that up once, so I just want to clear that up. And also here he says he died ago this very night. So again, it's kind of alluding to, well, it gives us a way back into talking about Marley and to talk about the significance of this night in particular. Obviously a little later on Marley's going to come back to him. So here they actually start to talk to him, and they're actually trying to explain to him that the poor are in a really terrible situation, and they actually want him to donate, etc. And then Scrooge's response is, are there no prisons? And then they don't take it in the sense straight away, or maybe they do and they just kind of block it off. They try not to think that a person would actually just say that, you know, well, there should be prisons for them to go to. They just try and be polite about it. Yes, there are plenty of prisons, and they put down a pen for him to actually sign and donate. And then he says, and the workhouses, obviously they were very demeaning, horrible places for people to work. Obviously you can research them, but basically it's probably worth knowing that I think Dickens's father Dickens's father was actually put in either prison or a workhouse with most of his family, and so this was obviously something very important to Dickens himself. You know, he actually saw that firsthand. You know, just because people were poor, they were put in terrible places and were never given a chance of actually, you know, having normal family life, or whatever that constituted of at the time. And the gentleman then, again, another nice character we're seeing. I wish we could say they were not. It's still in operation about the workhouses, and then Scrooge just starts talking about, well, the kind of the laws, etc., to put them in place, and the policies that are put them in place. You know, they're actually still working there. And the guy says, yes, I'm sorry, I'm afraid it is. And then Scrooge shows true colours. Oh, right, well, I thought from what you said that the poor weren't being looked after anymore, that those two things had stopped. And then the first kind of Christian reference is actually brought in, or strong Christian reference, or direct Christian reference, should I say, is brought in here. And he says that, you know, they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude. So all that's actually in place is nowhere near sufficient. And obviously Scrooge's attitude to it, again, is just to be very dismissive. But it's interesting here that we've got the poor highlighted, and that the want is keenly felt, and abundance rejoices. It says, like, he's encouraging to be kind, and then he says, what shall I put you down for? And again, Scrooge with the exclamation mark says nothing. And obviously there's a short sentence that you can analyze, and then it kind of goes on to it, and like Scrooge doesn't want to change in that. Not only does he want to not change in not only does he want to change and not give anything, but he wants to be left alone. He doesn't want his nephew trying to harass trying to make links with him, and he doesn't want this gentleman here asking him for money, etc. So you can see it's rather, he's setting up, like I say before, Dickens is really setting up badly for him to be this cruel character. And then he says probably his harshest line. He says, look, many can't go to the places, the workhouses, etc., and they'd rather die. And he said, if they'd rather die, then they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. So again, it kind of shows not only on his kind of dismissiveness of family, as we've seen, dismissiveness of charity, but now he's dismissive of human life. You know, if someone dies, he doesn't care. It's got nothing to do with him. Besides, and he just says, it's not my business, and all I care about is myself and his own business, etc. And so obviously it just kind of sums him up. And again, he's repeating his attitude and cementing his attitude. And again, Dickens is doing this so he can actually show us change, and also through highlighting some of the things here that we could do. He's actually that Scrooge doesn't want to do. He's actually highlighting some of the things that perhaps people should do, and in this sternness, etc. here, perhaps some of the readers at the time would have actually really taken along, like perhaps Scrooge was a bit too extreme, and so they leave.